Welcome back, Britain. It's 12:40 p.m., and if you're just tuning in, get ready for a wild ride through the labyrinth of UK immigration policies, riots, and public opinion polls. Today we're diving into the juicy results of a new Savanta poll, which reveals some rather spicy insights into what Brits are really thinking about the state of the nation. Spoiler alert, it's not all tea and crumpets.
Savanta shows that more people think the recent unrest was about migration rather than the Southport killings.
Yes, vote.
Kicking things off, our dynamic duo of GB News reporters breaks down the latest poll findings. Apparently, 2/3 of Brits blame the UK's immigration policy for the recent riots. Wow, it sounds a lot, huh? Yes, you heard that right. Immigration, not the tragic Southport killings, is being pointed to as the main culprit. It's like blaming the weather for your bad hair day. It might be part of the problem, but is it really the root cause?
Voters were split on whether the government's response to the disorder. 49% said it went well, and 43% it went badly in terms of the government's response. Should say that in this polling there are lots of different options that people could tick in terms of what they blame this all on. But shall we get the expertise of pollster and academic Matt Goodwin, who joins us here in the studio? Thank you, Matt.
The poll also shows that the public is split on how well the government handled the unrest. 49% think they did a decent job, while 43% are shaking their heads in disappointment. Which side will you choose? I do not know. It's like watching a football match where half the crowd is cheering and the other half is booing. No one can quite agree on what just happened.
Well, it shows us that many people associate the protests and arrests of recent weeks with the government's immigration policy, that many people do view the protests as being directly linked to the policy of mass migration that's defined the country for the last 30 years. And this is one of the arguments I made when the riots first started, which is that many British people, even though people in Westminster don't like to think about this, but they don't feel safe in their own country. The riots and protests were, for many people, for nearly 2/3 in this survey, were about our broken borders, were about the pace of change in the country. So yes, there was violence, there was criminality, of course there was, nobody has denied that. But underlying it was not just these sort of concerns over far-right thuggery, as Keir Starmer tried to have us believe, but actually these widespread concerns over migration and its impact on the country.
And this is
To help make sense of all this, the reporters call in the big guns. Matt Goodwin, a seasoned pollster and academic. Matt wastes no time in getting to the heart of the matter. According to him, the riots and protests aren't just about random acts of violence or far-right thuggery, as some might suggest. No, it's about something much deeper. I think he really wants to show his opinions. He said no 3 times. For nearly 2/3 of Brits, these disturbances are a direct result of the government's immigration policies over the past 30 years. It's like when you leave milk out of the fridge for too long. It's going to go sour eventually.
This has come in parallel with multiple polls that have shown Keir Starmer's approval ratings among the public looking a little bit like buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Is this suggestive of, and not that they necessarily will act on this, but the necessity of the Labour government to actually recognise the grievances and the reasons why there may have been this civil unrest, that this isn't necessarily, just... Surely maybe there is a kind of far-right hooligan element to this, but there's actually a much broader context that explains this unrest, and that actually the Labour government are going to have to grapple with that at some point.
Yeah.
Our reporter quickly picks up on the implications for the Labour Party. Could these poll results signal a need for Labour to actually acknowledge and address the public's concerns about immigration? Matt nods in agreement. He points out that while there might be an element of far-right involvement in the unrest, there's a much broader context that Labour can't afford to ignore. It's like trying to ignore a giant elephant in the room. Eventually, someone's going to notice.
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote this morning on my Substack that immigration is now the #1 issue in the country. So it's above the economy, it's above the NHS, it's above crime. That's a remarkable thing, given that we're in a very severe cost of living crisis. The NHS is collapsing and crime is visibly been bearing down on people. For the Brits to say, actually, no, immigration is my top concern, it gives you a sense of where the public mood is. And the other thing I would say is this weekend we got some other evidence from pollsters like Opinium too, which not only show that Keir Starmer's leadership ratings have collapsed since the election last month, and they really clearly have. I mean, his net leadership rating is down 26 points with that pollster. But they also asked Brits, well, what do you think about immigration?
Here's where things get really interesting. Matt reveals that immigration is now the #1 issue on Brits' minds, even surpassing the economy, the NHS, and crime. Huh? Really? Is that true? Yes, you heard that right. In the midst of a cost of living crisis, a collapsing NHS, and rising crime, immigration is what people are most concerned about. It's like being in the middle of a storm and worrying more about your leaky roof than the floodwaters rising around you. Matt doesn't stop there. He drops another bombshell. Keir Starmer's leadership ratings have taken a nosedive since the election. I think we are too familiar with him now. His net leadership rating is down 26 points, and people are increasingly skeptical about his approach to immigration. It's like watching a soap opera where the main character just can't catch a break.
I just make the point that people were asked in this survey a number of different questions about, essentially, to what extent do you think that each of the following is or is not responsible for the unrest we've seen? Lots of people, 75% saying far-right organisations are responsible, 73% saying social media companies are, 64% saying the UK's immigration policy, so yes, a large chunk saying that was to blame. It goes on, previous Conservative government, 53, traditional
Football
news
supporters.
organisations, 51, football supporters, 33.
Emily, can
So
I
it's
just...
quite a range of different issues that people think are at the bottom of this.
But can I just...
But wait, there's more. The poll didn't just ask about immigration, it also explored who or what people blame for the unrest. And let's just say there's plenty of blame to go around. Far-right organizations, social media companies, the government's immigration policy, and even football supporters all make the list. It's like a game of pin the blame on the donkey, and everyone's taking a turn. Do you like this game?
Press back on one thing here, which is, in a lot of these surveys about the riots, we have had people saying, oh, it's about the far right, or it's about, I don't know, figures like Tommy Robinson, or politicians, like Nigel Farage, who I would not consider to be far right, by the way. Well, why are those figures in British politics? Those figures are in British politics because of these widespread concerns over broken borders, mass migration and segregation in communities. So I just don't think what we might call the mainstream conversation about these disturbances has been accurate. I think, as I have kept saying since these riots erupted, the blunt reality is many people no longer feel safe in Britain, and that is why they reacted.
And it's quite possible.
Matt takes a moment to push back on the mainstream narrative that the riots were all about far-right figures like Tommy Robinson or Nigel Farage. I have heard about them too many times these days. He argues that these figures wouldn't even be in the spotlight if it weren't for widespread concerns about broken borders and mass migration. It's like saying that smoke is the problem without acknowledging the fire that caused it.
The first thing to say is, yes, people are much more concerned about immigration than they used to be. That's why it's the #1 issue in the country today. The second thing to say is, if you look at, for example, long-term, what we call trackers of public opinion, regular surveys that have been asked by people like YouGov, what they show over time is that the number of people who think immigration has been too high is now at a record high. The number who think it's about right has been falling. The number who think it's having a negative impact on the country has been rising. The number who think it's having a positive impact has been falling. So if we just take a step back and look at the longer-term trends, basically what I think has happened is, from 2010 onwards and through that Brexit referendum, and in 2017, 2019, we've had politician after politician after politician saying, we will lower the...
Matt points out that Brits have been voting for less migration for years, only to get more of it. The frustration is palpable, and it's no wonder that immigration is now the top issue. It's like ordering a salad and getting a double cheeseburger instead. No wonder people are upset. Taking a step back, Matt highlights the long-term trends in public opinion. The number of people who think immigration is too high is at a record high, while those who think it's having a negative impact on the country are also on the rise. It sounds interesting to me. Wow. It's like watching a wave build up before it crashes on the shore. The momentum is undeniable.
The overall numbers and take back control of the borders, only to do the very opposite of those things, to basically put mass migration on steroids. And this includes Starmer's government. I argued this morning, I think his ratings are collapsing, partly because he said to the Brits, look, I will smash the gangs. Well, already we have record numbers of illegal migrants coming into the country on the small boats. We've now got, I think, over 131,000 people in total since 2018. Starmer's also liberalising legal migration. He's increasing migration from Afghanistan. He's getting rid of the salary thresholds. He's making it easier for relatives of migrants to come in. He's doing the opposite, basically, of what he said.
Matt doesn't hold back when it comes to critiquing Starmer's approach to immigration. Yeah, he never stops when it is about our Prime Minister. Despite promising to get tough on illegal immigration, the numbers are still going up. And let's not forget his moves to liberalize legal migration, making it easier for more people to come to the UK. It's like promising to fix a leaky boat while drilling more holes in the hull.
Those who would argue that the reason why immigration is top of concerns at the moment is because on social media people can spread, the worst of the community tensions.
Oh, yes,
people can share information that relates to the worst examples, or you get feeds of illegal migrants coming over the channel, and it's all to do with social media pushing this type of content into your algorithm. So that's an argument you hear a lot.
Absolutely.
One of the reporters asks about the impact of social media on public perceptions of immigration. Matt acknowledges that social media can amplify the worst examples of community tension, but he pushes back against the idea that Brits are simply being misled. People aren't idiots, he insists. They can see what's happening in their country. It's like blaming the mirror for showing you that you need a haircut. The problem isn't the reflection.
So what I would argue is the elite conversation in the country would say this is all about misinformation, much like they said the vote for Brexit and the vote for Trump was about misinformation. In other words, people are too stupid to know what's going on in the country. They're being misled by social media. They're being led by Elon Musk. They're being led by politicians.
And therefore we don't have to listen to them.
Yeah, I would push back and say, actually, people are not idiots. They're not lemmings. They're not being pushed around. They can see what is happening to the country they love. They can see that they are now at risk of losing their identity, their culture and values because of policies that have been taken by both the left and the right, which they never voted for. So let me be clear. The Brits never voted for what I would consider to be an extreme policy of mass immigration. Politicians are saying voters are extremists because they're protesting. I think many people feel the Labour government is being pretty extreme in pushing the pedal down on a policy that...
Matt closes with a critique of the elite conversation in the country. Wow. I think he wants to show something important now. He argues that the elites are out of touch with the public, dismissing concerns about immigration as mere misinformation. But the truth is, many Brits feel that their identity, culture, and values are at risk. It's like being told you're overreacting when the house is actually on fire. As the interview wraps up, it's clear that the government won't be able to ignore these concerns for much longer. The public mood is shifting, and politicians will have to reckon with it sooner rather than later.